Hello, everybody. I'm Sudha Jamthe, and this is our weekly Wednesday live. And we're going to continue our conversation about AI models. This is our weekly. I had the other window where it's streamed, and I'm talking to myself. Okay, so we've been talking about AI models and what does it really take to build AI in your business. We did talk about AI, using AI to build products and how to use that for creating a human-centered interface from a design perspective for a few weeks. We will come back to that. But I've been talking about AI models. Specifically, we covered, what did we do? We covered personalization AI model. Last week, we had this fun conversation about AI thinking that we are an AI. So we covered what does product management for non-deterministic conditions looks like in a chatbot. And this week, we are going back to the book, the AIX book, to bring you another case study. And I just love this because we are doing this as a live show. Other than just writing the case study in the book, I get to bring it back to life with the real people, the real practitioners who contribute to the case study. So today I have a guest, Dalton Oliveira. He is from Brazil, and some of you know him because he joins our Weekly Wednesday on YouTube, and he's full of fantastic ideas. So we will know what does he really do and where his ideas come from. And if you're new to this, the way this works is I'm seeing some people here on watching on YouTube. You can just be quiet, watch, listen in. That's okay. But you will get the maximum value when you connect with other people who's our community here. So the way you do that is introduce yourself in the chat or ask a question, add a comment, and there's no right or wrong answer. I call this the Weekly Wednesday live Q&A, and we'll answer your questions or we will find answers together. And if you work in that area and we are having a discussion, if you want to share your experience, that would be fantastic too. Okay, so let me quickly check who is on YouTube. Nobody else has commented yet. And so we will continue our conversation with Dalton. Hello, Dalton.
Hello, Sudha. How are you? Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I don't know how long I know you for. So
at least 4 years, I think.
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, part of the council, right? We met at the IoT
yes.
Council. Yes.
Right.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, it's a long story, but I try to resume. I'm an electronics engineer. Okay, as soon as I left the university, I joined a Japanese company called Shimadzu. I was working there.
Sorry to interrupt. Since we have global audience, we have people from Europe. You're joining us from Brazil. I'm here from Silicon Valley. So one of the beauty of this is we have people from everywhere. So our context is very different. I'm here early morning and you're here at lunchtime. And there are other people who will be joining us from Europe in the evening. So tell me a little bit about where did you go to college? I mean, which university? Was it all in Brazil?
Yes, I'm from Brazil. I'm from São Paulo, Brazil, and I'm an electronics engineer. And I used to work for international companies. Since I left the university, I joined a Japanese company called Shimadzu.
Yeah.
With Nobel Prizes and things like that. I was an analytical engineer at that time. And since the beginning of my career till now, it's about 20 years already. And I worked for Shimadzu Scientific Instruments. I worked for NII, Nextel, Carrier Telecom.
Yeah.
I worked for Unilever. I worked for consumer goods. I worked for media companies. But the main thing, I was collaborating with all those companies as an engineer, as project manager, as business process manager, as product manager. And as long as, at least here in Brazil, we have a lot of hats at the same time. And this kind of experiences built my background with a lot of skills that we call today as digital transformation.
Okay, we will get to the digital transformation. I knew you worked for a career, and I know you work on IoT. I did not know about all your background from electrical engineering. It all makes sense with how much IoT that you build. So you were an electrical engineer. Tell me when you made the transition from being the actual engineer to project. Did you go from engineer to project manager? What was your transition?
Yeah, the beginning of my career, I worked for 1 year as an analytical engineer
Yeah.
with electronics, softwares, and things like that. And after that, I worked with marketing at Shimazu,
Okay.
right? And then as a project manager. It was around 2005, I think, 2005.
Okay.
And 15 years ago. So since 15 years ago, I'm acting as a project manager,
Okay.
process manager, product manager, digital product, and things like that.
Yeah.
And once this transition happened, all the technical stuff I was used to deal with, I needed to understand the marketing thing, the administration, and the business itself.
So I love your transition, because when I met you 4 years back, I did not see you as a marketing person, right? I knew you were business savvy as soon as I started talking to you, but you came across as an engineer. And then I knew that you were working on projects end to end. And so when you say product manager, project manager, I get it. But the reason I wanted to call that out is because my journey was, I came from being a computer science engineer, and I wanted to contribute on the business side. And I just thought, oh, those are the marketing people, and I need to move to marketing. So I made the transition out of, coding to become a product manager. And I moved progressively closer to roles, closer to the customer. And I ended up leaving and went and did an MBA, trying to learn the business side of things. And you learn that in the real job. So I wanted to call that out specifically because there are many students of mine who are, professional adults who want to make transitions and get into newer technologies, be it IoT or autonomous vehicles or AI. And they're always saying, I come from this background, this is what I'm doing, and I don't have the business skill, or I come from the business side, I don't have this, knowledge or experience in this particular industry. And what is fascinating for me is each one of us have a story. Bless you, Richard. Each one of us have a story where we have our own path from where we come. And even if two people are, resume wise, it looks the same, what was their original background, and then what was the passion that made them, made the transition, what was the driving factor, would have been is their story. And so it becomes very different for each person. Even if you have two resumes, that's why the job process is so complicated, because it's not, that you can make an AI sift through resumes and do it, because there are AIs doing that these days. But along the way, what was your passion, and then what was your experience doing that? When you go through doing that in an enterprise, that's the whole digital transformation journey. Even, I worked, in technology industry primarily, so it was like really building products. But how do you actually go through the process of building that product, interacting with the customers? What is your interaction? How was the org set up around you shapes you? And people underestimate that. When people think of explaining their background, they kind of, I used to do that. I used to downplay my being an engineer and just, talk about whatever I was doing at that point of time. And then I think it doesn't go away, because now when I started researching IoT and learning any of this exponential tech, I go back to my engineering past, because that's how my brain got wired, and I need to go into the details and want to know how things are done. So coming back to you, we want to talk about digital transformation. So the word product manager means so many different things for different companies. And I found that between East Coast and West Coast in US, because I used to work in Boston for the longest time and then moved to California, there was a difference. And initially I was very surprised. And then I realized it is mainly the technology company. So if I'm, building a product like I was at eBay or Google or any of the companies which are building technology, their definition of product management is very different. The product management role is very, very important, because the product manager is called the CEO of the product and the CEO of the customer, and they end up they wear a lot of hats, like you're saying, right? And then the product manager in an enterprise setting is also building a technology product, but it's a very different kind of interaction, because the core business and where they are in the org and which customer they're serving, whether it is a B2B, all of that comes into play. And even here between Microsoft and Apple and Google, there's a lot of difference on the core definition of product manager. And even within eBay, I've worked with amazing set of people, and there's so many different kind of product managers, because if you're the CEO of the customer, then you get to shape how you're going to achieve that success for the customer. And so based on whether the person comes from a data background, like I was a very data driven product manager. I was focused on product management for social, and because of my love of data, I was very, very hung up on data. I was, focused on how do we do data mining, and I have a patent on data mining Twitter feeds, because that's how I was looking at the world. So coming back to you, tell me about your IoT. How did you get into IoT? Because that's how I got to see you, and you were this tinkering guy. Now it makes sense because of your electrical engineering background. Tell me how you got into IoT. What did you do with IoT? And then I want to get to the case study. That is what we are eager to hear from you today.
Okay, and I believe that at least here in Brazil, as I told you, we have a lot of hats. And since the beginning of my career as an analytical engineer, at least I myself, I like to collaborate with the staff, with my team, the people from my team, the people from other teams. And the marketing at that time happened in a funny way, because once I had the knowledge about the equipments, Shimazu equipments at that time, people didn't know that detail to write, for example, technical articles for technical magazines. Didn't know the details how to build a booth in events, what kind of gas, electrical parts, and things like that. And I think here in Brazil, once we have a lot of hats, and I myself like to collaborate with a lot of things, I gathered a lot of experiences since engineer, marketing, project manager, and the important thing, as Sudha, you were telling us about the product manager. At least here in Brazil, we have the product owner too. And the product manager here in Brazil is for marketing or for digital. If it's for digital, it's digital product marketing manager. And if it's for marketing, it's just a product manager. And there are like a soup of letters, as we call here. And
so product manager, if just the title product manager is actually working with marketing.
Yes.
And so it's a business oriented product manager. Richard here was asking a question. Richard is one of those people who has come with variety of different background, came from being a teacher, and I don't even know his entire past. he came to my IoT course saying, I've been a teacher all my life. I'm on a sabbatical and I want to move into IoT. And then, once you get into IoT, you realize IoT is not this one thing. And so he's kind of learned a lot more, but he is on a journey to become a product manager. And he's actually, I think he calls himself project manager, right, Richard? But I would say Richard will make a great product manager. He's working as a project manager locally as part of his transition in what you would call as a digital product manager, because he works closely on the business side. But the transition potential is based on whether you can own the customer. Here, I would say in technology, it is about, how do you build the technology product? What would the specs of that product be, the feature set? And how do you think about the customer? And where do you want to take the customer? So the product manager becomes an important role because they are a role of imagination and being able to execute, working with everybody in the company. That's why it's called the CEO of the customer. So Richard has a question here. So in case you're new to this, I have my guest Dalton Oliveira, who is here joining us from Sao Paulo. And you also see Richard Myers right at the top there, who is one of my students. And Richard actually loves writing. So he ended up as my editor for my AIX books. In fact, Richard wanted to help me out with editing, and he said that on the first day of my class in IoT, and I was waiting for an opportunity to work with him. And so sometimes I bring some of my students to join here using the Zoom session, and some of you join on YouTube. So that's when, he will be able to ask questions on the, using voice, and you can see his face if he wants to turn video on, things like that. That's why sometimes you see that there's a lot of people here. And most of the times I don't have a guest and you're just talking to me. And this time we are lucky to have Dalton. So Richard has a question, and he said, based on your experience, what are the valuable skills for product manager to be successful? You came from the tech side. Does it seem like that's better than coming from the business side? Dalton answered that partially, or Dalton actually answered that for Brazil. And I mentioned that if you're working in a technology company, you actually have people who are from business side and tech side, and it's more your passion that drives you. And for specific products which are very tech oriented product, you will have to learn the technology. So if you come from a technology background, there are a lot of engineers who transition and become product managers, especially when the industry evolves in early stages. That is a typical path I have seen for autonomous vehicles. I've seen engineers who become product managers. I've seen engineers who become autonomous vehicle business managers, both in my among my students. But I see a lot of engineers and product managers, very common in Silicon Valley in technology companies. But if you're working in a very enterprise setting or a client focused setting, then coming from the business side works. And I also know fantastic product managers who came from the business side. And I find that fascinating, that how your brain gets wired based on your early experiences, and then you ask that kind of questions. But I believe to understand technology, to be successful in technology, you need to acquire a deeper knowledge of technology. So when I'm talking about AI, when I'm talking about autonomous vehicles, we could talk about, here are the business drivers, this would be the business model. But if you're actually going to build a layer of tech, you're going to go as a product manager, you're going to drive the specs for it and shape that, the direction of the product, of how you can add value to the customer using some feature. Having an intricate knowledge of the tech helps. It doesn't mean you have to learn Python or Java and start coding, but especially for AI, if you have a deeper understanding of the tech, I think it would you can add this intuitively. And Dalton put that very beautifully. Yeah, he came from being an engineer, and the way he made the transition is, when you set up a booth at an event, you decide on what demo do you want to show. you understand the feature set of your product, and you can articulate that better. There are many roles where here I would say in US in general, there are many roles who do the translation between the tech and and marketing. There are various different roles in between, but I think if you understand the product intricately, your existing product, it would help. If you have an understanding of technology, you can drive technology strategy better. So I want to come back to Dalton because I'm very lucky to get his time today. And so you moved to IoT because you came from an electrical engineering background and excited, and you saw the digital transformation everywhere, right? So how did you make this transition to AI? Or was it data that drove you there?
Yes. Summarizing, the first 10 years of my career, I was working for international companies. Then I decided to be an independent consultant, as what I am to today, since 2012 to today, 8 years. And in the middle of the path, I was invited to join the government of state here in São Paulo, Brazil. And again, collaborating with a lot of things around the project, product, digital, and things like that. IoT
so you work for the city. So you work for the actual city of Sao Paulo.
For the state of Sao Paulo, government of the state of Sao Paulo. Yes.
Yeah.
I worked it for 6 years.
I think that's when I met you. When I met you, we had this discussion about smart cities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And IoT came to me 2015, 2016 as a personal necessity in my home. That was the time when I built a smart home. I think this is the first project I built, and I showed it to you 5 years ago, 4 years ago when we met. And I myself, I'm the kind of person that I'm always looking for optimizing things. And with this, once I have the technology background, I know how to build that thing for the project and product perspective, and always thinking about how to engage the final customer around this thing I am building.
So I remember you brought the Smarty home. I think it was doing temperature sensing at that time. Then you expanded to more. And when you visited here, I took you to meet the CIO of Palo Alto to show this product, to see how we could potentially, use it somewhere else, or, you were just excited about what is possible with it. But where does the AI aspect come in? Because just a reminder for people joining us, Dalton Oliveira is here from Sao Paulo, and he has this rich journey coming from being an electrical engineer to product manager and digital transformation manager, I would say now. And he actually contributed a case study to the AIX book, and he talked to us about how he actually went about the process using data. And my fascination is with data, and here I am talking about how do you build AI models using data, and what is your role as a product manager or a business manager, and how does this happen for real in industry? Because there is some operations with AI, and there is no standard on that, and everybody is going through that cycle of automating some of it, or most of the time it's an iteration of just cleaning up the data again and again. So I want to hear that story from Dalton. And the way we do this is we go and answer questions. So there's going to be a lot of interrupts, so bear with me. But answering people's question is our highest priority. So I need to go back to that to see if there are any questions. I see David Kerrigan, who's joined us from Ireland. Hi, David. And he says hi to both of us. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, or Dalton is here. Otherwise, we can jump in to see what Dalton has to say. So walk us through your overall case study. And tell us what this was about. And as you're saying this, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a copy of the book and see what we can, I'm going to go back to the exact where the case study is and stuff like that, so I could ask you questions. So tell us what this AI case study is about.
Yes, and answering your previous question, AI came to me in the same time I was introducing to IoT, because I needed any kind of intelligence with IoT. So at that time, I built my first chatbot with a lot of conditions, a lot of data gathered. And once I was gathering a lot of data into cloud, at that time I needed some applications, some software to work with the intentions, the entities, with all of the data. And this was used in this case study. This case study is based on smart industry, because the scope of the project of a client.
So sorry to interrupt, Dalton. Okay. So for those of you who have the book, or any of my students who have joined this is part of the AIX book, and this is the case study number 4, digital transformation of a smart building. So talk to us about the building. Talk to us about the building, because we all come from different worlds and we'll just assume, what a building is or a size is. So tell us who this is for.
Yes. The scope of this project from a client of mine, it was about to manage the 5 fab labs, fabric laboratories this client have here in São Paulo city.
So and, what is a fab lab? What is a fab lab? Is it like a maker space? Is that?
Yes, it's more like a maker space, a hacker space with a lot of industrial equipments, CNCs, laser equipments, mechanical equipments, how to cut the wood and things like that. Once this client has 5 fab labs in São Paulo, in each zone of the city, he didn't know how to manage what equipment was being used more or less in which fab lab, in which size of the city, where the users are going most in the fab lab number 3, fab lab number 4. So the client, the scope of the project for this client was how to manage the fab labs equipments. For example, if I have laser equipment in fab lab number 2, in that equipment in fab lab number 2 is not being used that much that could be used in fab lab number 3. So with all this, to understand the behavior of the equipments and the behavior of the customer's clients, the customer of my client, I need data. And to have data, we need to gather data. How to gather data? With IoT. How to manage all of the bunch of data with AI and big data.
Okay, I want to pause for a minute. So one of the things that I got excited about AI, and I felt motivated to write the book and do the, build up a class on this topic. And in fact, my AI class, Artificial Intelligence for Product and Business Managers, is coming up this weekend in Stanford. And Stanford has decided to move our classes online. So, anybody can join the class even now if they're interested. So one framework I have is, I started talking about designing AI, and I realized that designing is not just the UX. And what you're saying is right in that same framework. So I just love it. So you start with the business problem you're trying to solve. So you went to this client and they said, we don't know how to manage our equipment. But when you were talking about it, you said they don't know where their equipment, what equipment was being used. And they had 5 different locations and they did not know who used what, right? So the problem could have been framed as understanding the customer behavior of the usage of equipment could be one, or it could have been, there are so many equipments out there, and how am I going to manage the different equipments, maintenance of the equipments, and what equipment is needed in different locations, because there are 5 locations. I'm talking about that specifically because typically when you say a business problem, when you start talking to a customer, or even when you scope it as a technology product for a specific customer persona, it is very easy to have this broad definition of building management, because I call this as, digital transformation for a smart building. But then you have to go to a specific use cases where you arrive at a problem statement, and then you have a hypothesis of, if we have this data, we can actually solve this particular problem, and then you get at the data. So I'm curious to see what was your journey in even defining that problem, or did you go straight to the data and did you iterate to get there, or did you just have that conversation with the customer saying, what is the specificity of this problem? Did you define the problem statement?
Yeah, because it always started with a simple question. The client wanted to know which equipment in each Fab Lab is being more used or less used. And we started to explore the idea because this main idea is it's about a smart industry, correct? Because we are talking about industrial equipment, about electricity, electronics, and about equipment itself.
Yes.
We are not talking about smart building, neither smart cities.
Yes.
And we started to explore this subject around another themes because the scope was that, and how I should solve this kind of problem for this customer. Okay. And the main thing was based on gather the information about the equipment and the start, stop, date and time, the current being used by each equipment, and all of those data going to cloud and bringing to the final user for the manager of each Fab Lab using a chatbot or even
before we get to a solution. So you wanted to know the equipment, and I did tell you I was going to interrupt a lot at this point because I have seen it, and every time I talk to anybody, this is a pattern. We have to understand the problem at a greater level, intricate level. Otherwise, we'll just get into this data collection loop, and it's very, very frustrating. That people are when they start building AI, they're frustrated because they think they don't have the data, or they think that their engineers don't know to build the right model, and there's a lot of wastage of time and frustration. So you had the problem defined about the equipment usage, because when you started talking about it, you said, how are people using the product, right? Using the equipment. So the usage of the equipment is your actual problem definition. But you seem to have a time series of data about when each product was used, each equipment, when it was used, when it was not used, the start and stop of it was very discrete. And then you had this for 5 different locations. So you also looks like you had the capability to identify each equipment in each location. So even if you had the same CNC machine in 2 different locations, you would know, was that there, or did you have to go get that data set up for them? Mm-hmm. Like, did you have to say, this is CNC machine number 1 in Fab Lab A?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we needed to map everything. I have the five locations, And each location have a lot of rooms with a lot of equipments. So we needed to map everything to understand what kind of data I needed to gather, to collect, to provide to provide the solution, because the solution for the customer is not numbers, right? It's okay, this equipment is used more here and this equipment is used less there. The final solution is not numbers. We need information, we need data, collected data, to transform this information, this data into information, into knowledge for the final customer.
So again, so one is you had to ID every equipment that was in use, and the client was happy to work with you on that, and so you had to go in and do that job, right? It's not like you asked them, say, give me a table of all your equipments, and they created a device ID for everything, so you help them.
Yes, I was involved in the whole project because I built the methodology, and we worked with their teams, their IT teams, and facilities teams together, because each professional is important: engineer, IT, facilities, the business itself, the managers. But the main thing is how to integrate everything, to understand. And besides interview the clients about his specific problem, we can sometimes get some other problem that customer could have in the future, and some other projects he's already working on to solve another problem that could impact in the project I'm working at that time. Understand? It's a complex thing, and when we have the overall view, to integrate everything is the best of all worlds.
So that is actually, again, you're saying something very beautiful, which is first you have to arrive at the problem statement. So you had to ask them, okay, this is about equipment management, and not, even if you're saying how people are using it, it is not about the customer, it's the user as the end user using the equipment. It is about the team and how they're going to manage the equipment. So you arrived at that as a problem statement. So though there might be several layers to that, and then you came up with the strategy of how do you arrive at the data and ID each of these, and interviewed variety of different people from various different job roles. But a beautiful lesson that you said here is, it is not just about what the customer thinks they want you to solve for today, but what is possible with this information once you have it, right? Once you have transparency of this data and you set it up, then there could be more things possible with this data, or there could be other projects somebody is working on, and that might be an expectation. So again, you might start with something to build out an AI, and then there would be other use cases that would kind of branch out from there. So either you proactively give them the use case and say this is also possible, or you find somebody one of the stakeholders who's going to sign off on this project, working on maybe the facility manager. Give us an example. I don't want to make this up. My brain is like racing, trying to make up what the different people are, their use cases, but I shouldn't be doing that. So give me an example of the equipment management is what you went to solve for. Give me an example of a stakeholder who had another project they were potentially working on, or another use case that could have evolved from this.
Yes, Sudha, you got the main picture. Believe me.
Thank you.
You got the main picture, because that's my model. That's the way I work. And every time I talk to I interview a client, I always put on ask for the meeting table the portfolio manager, because the portfolio manager he has the overall situation of that business, And once we started the conversation about that specific problem that the client required me, we start to explore another projects and another things that we could collab to. And as I told you before, to do not impact other projects and to do not impact the project I was required for. And sorry, and this is about the integration layer. We needed to understand the multitasks that is happening that are happening at the same time in the client base.
So was that a facilities manager who had this other futuristic project, what they would do with the equipment? Because you mentioned energy management when you got started.
Yeah, because it needed to be started with industrial equipments.
Yeah.
But we starting the conversation, exploring the thing, we could gather information for smart building, for facilities departments, even though for smart cities, because once we were collecting information about electricity of each equipment of each location, we have more data we are collecting data for that problem, but we have this data to solve another problem.
Yeah.
Understand what I mean?
Yes, yes. So that's the beauty of it. But I mean, I can see it as a client to get excited, say, oh, I could create more value from this data. And now I have this data.
Yes, for sure.
Right? That's why people get excited, like data is the oil and data is the money and all that stuff. But when you're trying to get this project done, you have to have a certain scope for it. Did you say this is the scope? I'm going to get you information on managing your equipments, or what equipments you would use in different facilities within your 5 fab labs. Then let's scope this tight, and then let's get to the next project. Is that how you worked it? Did you have the luxury to work that way?
Yes, maybe one important thing, maybe if we have in the audience here some project manager, probably project managers are asking themselves, okay, he used waterfall or agile, Scrum. Yeah. This is another subject. Let's focus on IoT and AI here, okay?
So I think that is important, right? Because if they are used to working in an agile way, they would obviously, work with you on an iteration, right?
Yes, yes. And of course, about the project management methodologies and frameworks, it depends on the client too, because of the familiarity of their teams and things like that. But back to IoT and AI, how to understand the main concern of the client and to bring to life and give the client the solution for that specific problem. Okay. You want to ask something?
No, I didn't
ask something. No,
I didn't ask anything. I just clicked to close my window, so I'm not reading this.
And of course, we need to map everything. And one important thing in this project in particular, I noticed that, for example, a CNC machine from the same supplier, for example, in Fab Lab 1, we have the same CNC machine in Fab Lab 3, and the energy consumption of the same machine from the same supplier is different from Fab Lab 1 and Fab Lab 3. Why?
Wow.
That's the question, because once you have the same machine in different Fab Labs, you think, okay, this is we are gonna collect the same information, but no. And at that time, I noticed that the project I was building with the client could have information for the people from power management of this client, because we discovered as a surprise mode that one or two of the 5 Fab Labs, they have some kind of electricity or energy problem. It's drain current so much, and we noticed that the energy bill for some Fab Labs is higher than the others with the same machines or less machines. So this project could bring information that we are not expecting.
So this is a classic example where you went to manage their equipment and the data, now you got the data, and that actually told you, that data informed you of something that you were not expecting.
Yes, because
so it was not in your original hypothesis when we said, okay, we'll look at what, and so you were thinking what equipments were going to be used in different Fab Labs by how much in terms of time, but you were not thinking about the energy consumption would be different for the.
Yes, because the circuit of the different locations, the different Fab Labs, of course, it's different. It's 2 different locations. But when we think this is the same machines in two different locations, should consume the same energy, but we saw that the same equipment was not consuming the same energy as the other location, and we saw that there was a circuit leakage. It's kind of electronics and electricity thing in some locations. And while we were testing, it could be possible to have the maintenance where the client never know about that was happening.
Okay, Richard actually dropped out from here and went to YouTube. So I just want to make sure that I check for his questions. So, okay. So did you put the sensors? Did you actually help them put the IoT sensors? So you did more than just an AI project. You did a real IoT project, end-to-end, added sensors. Because one of the things I find with IoT projects is, what kind of sensor are you going to use? And then once you collect the data, there's a lot of noise in the environment. And then even scrubbing that data, getting that data to be clean becomes a problem. Why I'm saying that is, when you find that one of the equipments is showing that it is using more electricity than the other, it's possible to distrust the sensor, right? People would say, something is wrong. This is the same equipment, same vendor, must be same. So there's a lot of assumption that people come up with, right? So you have to kind of fight that in some sense, right? That's when you're dealing with different people, there would be somebody who says, I know this and I have business acumen of managing energy and that's my job. Don't step on me. I'm not going to put you on the spot about any specific client, but when you found that this was an energy leakage issue, you make it sound like, you know, you're the storyteller. So you're just saying, oh, that was an electrical equipment, right? But I go back to the data, right? So here I'm with you that you said set up sensors and we are going to look at all the different equipments, how they're used. And then you got the data, the first rev of it, maybe there would be more revs of it. And then you find that one equipment was this energy hog. And did you actually go and do the circuitry, please? Because you come from electrical engineering. If I was running the project, I'm not going to go and find the circuit, whether it was working. How did you arrive at that as the sidetrack of a different problem that you could solve for the same client?
Yeah, this is a basic thing that sometimes happens in project management, that something appears and you are not expecting. And while this forum is about data and everything, it's matching, because we are talking about in this specific example the same machine for different location, the same sensor I built, correct? I used the same sensor, the same supplier, the same source code for the hardware, okay? And everything was the same, but we couldn't expect any difference from data from the machine A from this location, from the machine A for other location. We couldn't expect a different number, and it just happened. Just happened. And we are, again, within data, we could gather another information to check that was a circuit problem, not from my sensors and neither from the machine, because we could think about, okay, it's a different number in current from that machine. Okay, that machine needs maintenance. No, that machine didn't need maintenance at that time. It was
So,
a circuit. But you are exploring the subject using data. You need to collect data to understand the overall thing.
so you actually set out to build a chatbot. I remember when you got started, you were like saying, okay, we got all this data, we sent it to the cloud, we built a chatbot. And I was like, wait, let's get to understand.
Yeah, but that's what the summary.
So your promise to the customer was that you're going to create a chatbot, right? That's what your end.
The promise, my output should be solve my problem, answer my questions.
Okay.
And the way I found to this, of course, is to collect data, to build a dashboard for the desktop and for big screens, and to build a chatbot for mobile. The manager could be on the beach in the shopping, and
Yep.
he could check what's happening in real time.
Okay. So the chatbot was on mobile, and essentially it was querying the data which was present on the dashboard. If they were walking in the fab lab, right, they could sit at a desktop and look at the dashboard and say what is the equipment usage and the energy usage. Did you start with specific metrics? What were your metrics that you were going for? What were the metrics you were measuring for?
We need to work with raw data to build the overall, and for the chatbot to bring a message that that machine is being used more and that is being used less.
Yeah.
And to build these layers, we need a lot of data, since the raw data, right? Understand where each data comes from and goes from, to build the intentions and have the right entities for each intention. When we build the algorithm itself.
So tell me about the algorithm you built, because we started this as a whole AI use case, right? So you ended up building the dashboard based on the past data, right? That was stored data. And then you had a real-time component to the data that was collected from the sensors based on some specific trigger action, right? Start and stop of the machine, or a usage of a customer, or something in changing in the environment, right? That is all stored in the cloud, right?
Yes.
So it's basically time series of data based on sensors. And how often you collected it?
Every time the machine started and stopped.
Okay.
Because we needed to check the behavior of the users that are using, and when the machine is stopped, it makes no sense to collect the data. And the important thing, besides collecting data from the equipments, we decided to put sensors in the front and the exit door.
Okay.
To understand how many users are dealing with that machines, in that room for each location.
Okay.
So it was important, this kind of information too, because of the, okay, how many users are going there? Because each user has different behavior for that machine. And this could collect information about the maintenance of the machine. For example, when our car, our laptop, these personal instruments are used to that user. Okay, for example, cars, at least here in Brazil, most of cars are mechanical, they are not automatic. And what mechanic says that if my car, I drive my car, only me, not my spouse, the car should have a behavior for that user.
Yeah.
If a car is driven by 3 different people, this car is not used for only one person.
Yeah.
And that's the same when we talk about sensors in the machines, in sensors in the rooms, and collecting information, because this is not about just collecting data and output numbers. It's
Yeah.
about to understand the overall thing, and does this number make sense for the business?
So we'll have to talk about this another day, this whole personalization, like, of the car, the personalization of the equipment for the usage of the user. So it's possible that there is some user who is just coming and pounding on a device a lot more. Maybe, you have a 3D printer and somebody just goes crazy. And
Yes.
maybe I come in and I just use that extensively. Within that 1 hour, I kind of work that machine to the maximum. And then another person might be, using it to whatever extent you expect it to. I've had this conversation with Ken Sinclair from Automated Machines about personalization of buildings when you digitize buildings. So that's why I have a big fascination with automated buildings, because the user becomes a variable in there. So coming back to your case study, did you again identify the users who were the customers and then map that to the equipment? Because now it's getting more complex, and then that adds the real-time dimension to the data.
Yes, again, it always started with a single scope.
Yeah.
I needed to understand what machines
Yep.
are more or less used. But we start to explore a lot of things and gather data because makes sense for the business. Understand? For example, another data we started collecting, and it was not in the initial scope, was, does this Fab Lab, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 5, each Fab Lab is near subway station? Because if it's near subway station or bus lines, we can understand that this location could have more users than other locations that there's no subway station and bus line near. Well, it's a complex subject. If we start to explore a lot, it's never ends.
So, when I always go back to the car,
Okay.
So with rideshare companies have this mobility platform on, there's the customer and on the supply side and demand side. So if you're getting a bike and then you're dropping off the bike, so they have the transactional data. That's the mobility data that cities collect from all the bikes and scooter companies. And they have this concept called a hotspot and a cold spot, and based on where the demand is. So finally, when you're adding location as a dimension to things, then it comes back to the user demand on that location, and that's the hotspot or the cold spot. So in that same case, similar to that in your Fab Lab, the one that is closer to a subway station becomes a hotspot. Or even then it could be that you have trains on a certain time and that's when people show up. And then when they don't have trains, then people are staying put if they're already in the building, or they're not yet new people are not showing up because new trains have not come. So that's how it adds more complexity. Did this become like a major scope creep? I'm just thinking as a product manager, if you're just saying this is what I'm going to give you, and this becomes this equipment electricity usage story, and then now you're saying add the people dimension to it, and now you're talking about usage, and maybe then it can lead to marketing. That's why you were saying so many people were involved. The reason I was very fascinated with this with your project was it was not just a typical chatbot, right? You said it was a chatbot. The chatbot is just happened to be the interface, and designing the chatbot and what they will ask and non-deterministic conditions is a whole different conversation, right? But here it was about getting the data, setting the sensors, defining the project, what the scope of the use cases is. And it's just fascinating how you navigated multiple different stakeholders in there. And they're happy, I guess. That's why this is your happy project you are sharing with me.
Yeah, because the beginning of everything should be to translate it to the business, to the client, right? His main concern. But with all of this data, in the end, we built another chatbot for the users, for the final users that go to this Fab Lab. And some of them are subscribed and things like that. Once you are subscribed there, there's a chatbot to check how many users are in that Fab Lab 1 or 2, and when was the last time that machine was used, or if that machine is being used at that time. For example, I am here, I want to go to the Fab Lab near my home, and once I am a subscriber, once I'm joined that group, I could check in the chatbot if that Fab Lab is crowded or not, and if the machine I want to use is being used at this time or not. So we have a lot of data to transform this for the customer experience too. Understand? Not for the business. Of course, the business is too important. It's the main thing. But once we have all this data to the customer experience, everybody is going to be happy.
So you ended up creating two different chatbots because you ended with the B2B setting. That's how you got started with the project. And then you added an additional project. I'm guessing that would be the customer experience. And I'm thinking,
today is in a pilot mode.
Okay. And then there is also there could be more usage of this information that marketing could use and say, okay, now how do I entice the customers to come back? Because the customer who gets the subway line to this Fab Lab is not able to use that equipment because that equipment seems to be always busy, and maybe we need to add more equipment. So that's how it becomes a running the business problem, right? So
it's becoming bigger. Yes.
That's why it's sometimes they say that a lot of IoT projects don't get out of pilot mode, but sometimes it's a good thing because you're going through an education of the customer to become data literate, everybody in the company, to understand the value of data. What kind of data do they even have? And then once they have it, you're actually creating more and more value from the data. And then that's why you said it's about digital transformation, right? You're actually tying back the customer usage to the equipment maintenance and the cost that they're managing the whole Fab Labs and marketing and everything, right? The customer experience. And there are many tentacles to the problem. I'm so happy to hear that you had a client who was, so ready for digital transformation and working well with you. We reached the end of the hour and I just didn't even realize because this was amazing. I have one question. You said about an algorithm. Did you actually build an algorithm or use an existing algorithm to manage this time series? What did you end up using?
Some of the tools I'm using, I don't use to share because it's
Oh,
part of
yes.
my consultancy services.
Okay, that's right. That's right.
But
You did
but of
warn me. I
course,
forgot. Yes, you did
you
warn me. Yes, you cannot tell your secret sauce. But did
you
you
know
have,
you can we can discuss later in off, and of
okay.
course your audience can contact me at any time. We can explore
Okay,
their necessities.
it's fine. So that is why I didn't make your case study about the algorithm, because for every other case study, I actually mentioned what specific algorithm they use. If there is like off the shelf, some kind of machine learning API that they were using, then I
Yeah,
mentioned.
because depends. It depends too on the budget client, right? We could use Google Cloud, AWS, Amazon, Microsoft Azure, as cloud. What else? TensorFlow from Google,
Yes. Yeah.
and things like that. But it will all depend on the budget client.
Yeah.
Sometimes we needed to build when the budget not that big. We need to build some things by ourselves. We needed to, instead of buy something already done, sometimes we needed to work with what we have,
Yeah.
just to how can I say that in English? Just to make the client happy.
Yes.
That's my model.
Yes. That's fantastic. Um, I mean, you've touched upon a lot of different topics of, well, what tool you would use and for your machine learning pipeline, build versus buy. There's so many uh, topics we could pick up from here to continue on our conversation. But we are at the end of our hour and I need to wrap up. So thank you so much, Dalton. This was fantastic. Thank you so much. And you said you're happy if people connect with you on LinkedIn. You actually added an AR for my book. What was that? Do you have a demo of that? Or do you have a video of that? Is
Yes,
that
I have a video I can share on my screen, or I can share you the link later.
no?
And
Yeah, you can just do a screen share. Share the screen and just show us. So
okay,
Dalton surprised me and made an. Dalton is always tinkering and trying to do something fun, new stuff. So I didn't know about his real job, and he was solving real business problems for clients. In this scale. So he ended up showing me an augmented reality app that he built on top of my new book, on top of my AIX book. Okay, so your screen is being shared and it is showing Smarty Energy. Yes, so you've recorded it. So that you can make that AR robot pop up on top of my AIX book. You can voice, so you can talk to it, Dalton. We cannot hear the video. Okay. So that robot is going to jump up and come to life. We cannot hear you, Dalton. So you have to talk to it.
there's no audio in the video.
There's no audio. The audio is very feeble. So
Oh,
you,
sorry.
you just have to talk to it what you're doing here. Tell us, we can hear
Yes,
you.
I can share the well, the main thing I was thinking about, again, thinking about to bring value to the business, to the book, and bring value to increase the engagement with the customer experience. And I decided to build this AR for the AIX book cover.
Thank you.
Again, congrats for the book.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I started thinking, oh, let's start with a different thing, different customer experience. What we can have here on the book itself. Okay, let's work with the cover book. when you point your smartphone camera on the cover book using a social media platform, the small robot just pop up of the book cover, and you can go like this. I'd like to share this here in the streaming, but I don't have the book, and I tested using the laptop
You should
stream,
be
and
get,
I
you
can.
should be you should be getting your copy very soon. So then we
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Okay, so thank you so much. This was really good. Thank you so much for your time. I need to wrap up. I will follow up offline with you and see how we can get the AR out to people who already have the book. So maybe, you know, they can play with it or show us what the experience looks like. Okay, so
okay. Thank you very much, Sudha. Thank you very much, everybody. It was a great time, and you know, Sudha, you can count on me at any time.
Yes, thank you so much, Dalton. Before I just wrap up, I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anybody who's sitting with a question on YouTube. And with that, I'm going to close out. I'm here on split screen, so I'm not able to switch to the YouTube. But thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you joining every week. And thank you so much, Dalton. We appreciate it. And you're open to connect with people, Dr. Dalton Oliveira. I'll follow up and post this on this archive will sit on Driverless World School under live stream lessons from where you came. I will give you Dalton's LinkedIn there, so if you want to connect with him, he said he will give you the secret sauce of how he built the algorithm and what was his ML pipeline story. Okay, thank you so much, and I will see you all next week. Bye. So I'm going to stop the recording. I'm still on YouTube.